Welcome everyone to the Voice of Terminus show number 73. I'm joined today by Lex. Say hello, Lexa. Say hello, Joshua. And we have in the background with us for our regular Thursday show, Shy. Say hello, Shy. Shy will try and take your questions for when we get to the point in time where we will try and grab your questions and answer them. And then we have Zathras in chat as well. Those are our two wonderful moderators that help us out here. And today's topic is, I don't know if you can guess. Obviously it says minigames on top, but we set up a nice layout background for you. And I wonder if any of you can guess what we have set up there. So, anyway, minigames. I put out a tweet earlier on today, or yesterday, asking, I don't know if the music's too loud. And, a second. What the hell? There we go. Everything's set. So we put out the question if people would like to see mini games in taverns or in out on the real world, and so far there's actually a huge support towards that. And what are your initial thoughts, guys, on a mechanic to have mini games in the game world itself for us to engage in as additional time sinks and socialization abilities? And we'll start with your thoughts, Lex.
Well, I don't think you can go wrong with minigames. It's one of these things where it's complete fluff. You know, they don't need to be there for the game, but it's always, it never hurts. My only real concern is that we have minigames in the appropriate place. If they're an immersive type of minigame, meaning they're in the world, you're playing it in the world, versus just a fun little thing for the person sitting at the desk, has no immersion elements at all, like gems from EverQuest, where it's just type /gems, you get this little match 'em up game.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, just have them in the appropriate place.
Okay. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I think that basically, so long as it doesn't force people to go to these type of things and engage in it, and will unbalance the game in any way, I think it's a fun addition to basically for people to do. And so long as it's built in and it weaves into the actual world itself, and as Lex says, not something that's totally pulls you out of the actual game just to go into another game, then you might as well stop playing the game and do some other game then. So yeah, I think that has to fit in properly.
Yep. So this whole idea came about when, you know, we had a open discussion in our Discord from Dayhawk. You know, I was talking about, you know, I've always wanted to see when I go into a tavern to rest, like in World of Warcraft, if you go into a tavern, you get the most regenerating points for your character. or like in EverQuest 2 or other games, you would have to go inside your starting city or into a town, a major town, to regenerate yourself and get that, you know, XP bonus and whatnot back, that refreshment and so forth. And I said, look, well, what about if you could, you know, go into a tavern, for instance, and do a lot more with your group, friends, or with a friend, rather than just going in there to rest. Let's say, for instance, now, you know, you've done your round of dungeon runs, or done your round of raiding. You're not ready quite to quit. You want to hang out, see if you can meet some new cool people. You go into the tavern, you can sit down and play, you know, a board game, something similar to chess or something like that, or checkers, or, you know, a round of cards similar to Gwent from The Witcher 3, or even with Vanguard, you know, it's diplomacy. I think there's a similar kind of card game kind of thing, and, you know, stuff like that inside a tavern. But you could also do things outside in the real world. Like, I would love to see EverQuest 2 kind of did it, and World of Warcraft have it as well. They have, you know, we have the Dark and Light Fair in EverQuest 2 that goes around. In World of Warcraft, you have a fair that goes around. When something like that would happen, you know, like let's say outside of Avendir's Pass, around Throne Fast, there's a major fairgrounds that gets set up. You could go there, and you could maybe go to a fortune teller that just for fun and giggles tells you a made-up story about your character, what lies ahead of him. You could have maybe archery events. You could have like player versus player sword fights. You know, people dressed up completely in bulked armor go and fight each other. And something that I would love to see happen is jousting. I would love to get on a horse and joust against people. Have that massive pole, sit on a horse, and just for fun, every now and then, be able to joust against them. Anybody who's older than the age of 30 will all know this. On the Commodore 64, there used to be medieval games, and you could actually go and joust against people. That was my most favourite game to play on the Commodore 64, was those medieval games. You had archery, you had jousting, you had sword fighting and stuff like that. So this is what I'm kind of like, you know, trying to look at and see what could they do, if anything, what could they do, what would people like to see, and how could it be done. We've had some fun things in the games that we all know. EverQuest had in the Isle of Mar, EverQuest 2, you could actually pay money and race pigs. You could have pig racing. So there's, you know, some games have had some fun little themes to it, fluff. And what things would you like to see? Have you, you know, thinking about this? If you had the options available to you to pick mini games, what would you guys like to see? We'll start with you, Josh.
Yeah, so if I have to think back to other MMOs that have tried their mini games in the past, I think most have failed at it, except for maybe World of Warcraft with their fair. I think that those were actually quite fun and engaging on what they try to achieve in those mini games. So be that as it may, I think games of skill, so archery for instance would be great. Things where you need to aim at other things, or aim across the halflings, or whatever the case may be, into certain areas. Those type of things. I think that anything that involves skill and brings a bit of humor to things is what I'd love to see.
Cool. What about you, Lex?
This is a minigame that me and my friends used to do just for fun in EverQuest. We would go to Kelethin. For those of you who don't know, in EverQuest 1, Kelethin is a city in the trees. Basically, homes built on platforms connected by bridges. Our characters would get drunk as we could possibly get, to the point where we couldn't drink alcohol anymore, and I would provide all the alcohol. And we would race through this place to see who can get from one area to the next without dying. And I guarantee you, well, not necessarily dying unless you were a low-level character, but the high-level characters would fall, try to find your way because you couldn't see, you couldn't walk a straight line, you couldn't ask for help because your text was all garbled. I mean, it was something that the players did themselves, but it was so much fun because we had cash prizes and item prizes and everything. Just something simple like that, where it's like, hey, here's an obstacle course. Oh, by the way, you've got to drink this mug of ale that just goes boom, you're drunk, and run through it and see if you can make it through. I would sit there all day and play that game.
Cool.
Nice.
You know, when I looked at this, and we thought, and Dayhawk, brought up this idea of doing mini games. It spiked a direct interest for me because this is something I definitely would like to see. And as you two already mentioned at the very beginning, it would have to be thought out really well. And the way I would approach this, if I were VR and I was going to introduce something like this is how I would personally go about it. For the taverns, I would create something global that is, commonly known throughout Terminus. It may be a board game, maybe a card game that is generally known amongst the races. But I would have, for the individual towns or cities, starting cities, for each race, its own individual minigame. Like, for instance, with the Darkmere, we know they're an underwater race, this, that, and the other. Something to do with maybe you having to dive underwater and catch as many shells as possible that are in the water. No matter what race you are. So who can stay under the water the longest and catch the most shells? Wild's End, for instance, with the halflings. That's such a mystical, mysterious, intertwined area. I would have a kind of a racing yard where players would go out and run a certain round and who's the fastest. So I would basically break it down into 9 different mini games for each of the 9 races. So each race would, come on, think about the gnomes, people. A skyship, jumping off that ship, skydiving.
You have a very good point. Each culture is going to have its own pastimes. So, you don't have to go overboard. You don't have to make the super complex game like Gwent.
Yes.
You could do something very, very simple, like the Scar could just be checkers board. And it's just checkers, but they use spikes versus little chits or markers, whatever you want to use. You take a more intellectual race, whoever you want it to be, and do that a little more like chess. It doesn't have to be super involved. It just has to be done well, and it has to be worth doing. Because nothing even if it's just a fun little mini game like Gems from EverQuest 1, and I keep going back to that because I played that game a lot waiting for raids to start. There was no real point in playing that. But I still played it. And the reason that made it the point where I kept playing was because me and friends were constantly trying to beat each other's high scores. Yeah. If you could institute that in a game that's seemingly pointless, just giving people a reason to play. But it's when mini games are done well in the way of there's no real point at all.
Yeah, I also remember when the new in EverQuest 2, when the new guild houses I don't know what they call them, but they would actually create obstacle courses run by certain of the owners of the places, and they would put up like 100 or 100 plat in the day, or 1,000 plat for people to win this as quickly as possible to get through those obstacle courses. not as fun as the drunken one, as you said, but it got a lot of people to come and actually look, and it served another purpose to show off their guild house, basically. So that was also quite fun.
There really is a lot of options you have for minigames, especially inside of a game already. When you think about it, the minigames are basically designed to just kill a little bit of time. You know, each round or each event just kills a little bit of time. That way you can play multiple times, you can only play it once if you're waiting for your friends to jump on or whatever. The fact that even if you win a little bit of money, it doesn't even have to be anything significant, just a little bit makes you feel great. But I lost my train of thought.
Well, you give it some thought, and then I just had a blitz. Now, you guys all remember? I don't know. Again, everybody over 30 might remember this, where you basically put up little twigs against the wall, and then you used to roll dice or roll money, chuck coins against the wall, and whoever knocked over the twigs and everything, and the more twigs that you knocked over or whatever it was, you would be the winner, and you would get the money that was in the pot. Now, just a train of thought, socializing, because this is we're talking about how to socialize and what we could do to socialize in downtimes and everything. What about when you're in a group? You're out adventuring, you're doing something, you're doing some grinding, you're doing this and you're doing that. What about having a small little dice game of sorts or something like that, or marbles that we could actually, build up a campsite. We're sitting there, we're having a downtime. We've got a certain spot we want to, engage in, a certain area where we want to go and pull some mobs for a couple of hours and do our thing. What about adding some kind of like mini game there as well for those people that are going to sit down and rest for a bit and socialize and just do their jam for the next couple of hours, something like that as well, to give people outside in the actual world adventuring something to do. I think that would be pretty cool as well, to actually sit down there and bond, and while we're bonding we're playing a game. We're playing a game of chuck the marble into the hole or something, or Yahtzee.
Yeah, or something similar to Gwent, where you can have a game that takes into the number of people that are in the group around the fire, and you bring up the cards above each person's head, type of thing, and you can play games while you just sit around the fire and wait for daylight, maybe.
Yeah,
that would be great.
I mean, you got. Go on, Lex.
As a developer, I love that idea. I would only ever see it really being used in cases where you and a friend are waiting for other people to jump on, or your LFG waiting for people to join you, kill time, or if you were raiding and you were killing time. Because if you think about when you're out adventuring, you're going to have downtime. There's no way around it. But I believe VR said they were going to try to minimize the downtime.
Yeah.
To a point. So that doesn't really leave a whole lot of room for minigames. If you were out adventuring and minigames were kind of like the thing to do, you're kind of defeating one of the main purposes of the actual game itself.
Yeah.
So you've got a real fine balancing act here between a game and the actual game. You don't want one to become more popular than the other.
I think the biggest question should be asked, what is the ultimate purpose of minigames? Is it to add fun? I mean, is the game not fun enough that you have to add in minigames to make it even more fun? What does it actually ultimately give the people to actually partake in these mini games as well? I think those are the questions that they have to ask.
At the end, though, you had a really cool idea, though. We were talking about this on and off yesterday, I think it was Josh. You had actually a cool idea towards, mini games inside taverns and stuff, with, giving out a fluff buff, more or less. I think you mentioned something like along the lines of you get maybe a slight speed bonus if you win, You know, you get like an additional 2% for the next hour or so in run speed. So you add fluff bonuses. The reason why I personally would love to see mini games is due to the fact that I do spend a lot of time not adventuring or going in dungeons and stuff. I do spend my time in cities, running around, you know, engaging with people, seeing what's going on. And I would just love to sit there and have the option, you know, when I get into a conversation, I'm sitting around. Because, you know, I do tend to have those points in time in games, for me personally, where I will just stand where I am right now, and all of a sudden, a nice conversation's going on in out-of-character chat. Or, you know, we have a group conversation going on, because nothing's going on at the moment. There's a good conversation going, or in guild, or somebody whispers me a question, and then I start talking to this person. So I'll sit there for like 10, 15, 20, 30, maybe even an hour on and off PMing this person or engaging in OOC chat. So that's why I would love to see something like a mini game happen as well, where I can go into a tavern and maybe just sit there and just hang out in this tavern, play a little game with somebody else and chat while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
You know, socialize with the people.
I think Zolzamar brings up something. He mentions it, a light source bonus like a wisp. Yeah, it goes along those bonuses that we spoke about. But wouldn't it be nice if the ultimate thing that you got was maybe like a minor enchantment where your sword lights up, so you don't have to spend time with a torch in your hand now. Your weapon will actually illuminate the area for you, type of thing, or something that adds a benefit to dungeon runs or underground or whatever it is, but doesn't overpower you as a person based on what you win.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm also a sucker for fancy particle effects. If they just made my sword spark and crackle, I'd be like, before I go off on this party, I am getting that thing.
Yeah.
But, I'm just vain. With my character, I'm usually very vain.
I want to talk about the fair, the fairs a bit, because I always thought that they were pretty cool. The idea, having these fairs go around from city to city, from zone to zone. I always thought they were pretty cool, and then I was vastly disappointed when I got there. You get there, you think, hey, this is going to be some cool event going on, because it's published like that. It's published like a huge event. You get there, and it's the most disappointing thing around. It's like there's nothing going on. You have maybe an NPC that offers you the same quest over and over and over and over again. And then, in EverQuest 2, they had that ridiculous hovercraft racing. That hoverboard race. You were sit on this weird flying hover gimmick made from the gnomes, and you would travel through discs in the individual zones. You have a high scoreboard. Who's the fastest? When it came to real life events like St. Patrick's Day, Valentine's Day, they had all these little fun things going on where you would like run around and gather the most roses, or Bossfell, going into those individual dungeons and going through different storylines. Like they would tell basically the story of Scrooge. You would go and do different quests, this, that, and the other. That was pretty cool. But most of the time, it was all just so disappointing. You'd think that they'd offer you all kinds of weird stuff. This fair should be mystical, and when I get there, I want to be pranked. I want to be ganked, pranked, and beat up. I want to be able to get drunk, and they send me off. I get so drunk, I get randomly teleported in the world of Terminus. And now, I got to fight for my life because they put me in the most dangerous place I could possibly be. Those are the kind of things that I would expect to see happen for me when I engage in a fair. Is, getting pranked, being able to get absolutely drunk and have myself maybe teleported. Go to a fortune teller that tells me all kinds of, you're going to be glorious. You're going to destroy the the dragons of Terminus, and you're going to be well known. They're going to make statues for you all over the place. Just make up crap. It doesn't matter. At least make something up, and then have maybe a few individual tents set up where, like Josh already said at the beginning, you might have to aim and throw a ball at a bunch of cans and whatnot. That's what I expect of the fairs. I would love to see a fair actually be a fair in game with multiple things to do, to have fun, and make it a global event.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I certainly feel that a lot of the fairs that they do in games are like, oh, come to the fair, it's going to be great, it's going to be huge, and you get there and there's like 4 tents, and you're like, fit in my kitchen, Like, at least put some work behind it, guys. Come on, please. You're reusing assets over and over again anyway, so you didn't remake this goblin. You didn't remake this dwarf. You didn't remake this tent. You just put the tent here. That's from this town. Then you rotated it here, put it here, rotated it that way. That's all you do. Actually make stuff for the fair. Make the fair an actual, real, fun event that's meant to put people at awe, or just put them in awe of everything you've done for them. And for developers, fairs and stuff like of that sort are pretty much free tickets to have them go nuts. And there's doesn't matter. You could make Game of Thrones references from the NPCs. You could have a game where the whole point of it is to throw a fish at a gnome to see if it disintegrates. I mean, it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's fair, and it is strictly for fun. Exactly. You can argue that it does remove your immersion, but as long as you keep rewards and benefits to the point where you don't really need them, it's just something for fun to do. Yeah. Then don't worry about it, because if it's going to break your immersion, then don't go. You're not missing. You're just keeping your immersion intact. Whereas some other people who are, had a rough day and just need a laugh, go to the fair. It's going on. Okay. I threw a fish at a dwarf and he turned into a frog. I don't understand, but
it's always hyped. It always gets hyped by these game companies. Like, hey, the fair's coming back into town. And, the first two or three times you think, great, I want to go there and everything. And then you go there and you get disappointed. It's exactly what Solzimar said. It sounds like there is a need to have more stuff to do than time to see it to make you want to find the fair or follow it again. Exactly. They need to really think about, this is something that, if they do decide to put into the game, it deserves some time to be thought on before you put it into the game. Because I want to see the fair something like, because if I think about it, I also think if the fair is going to go around, right, from zone to zone, yes, I could possibly follow it. They should have an entrance fee and whatnot. It should cost you money to get in, and it should be something that is well spread out and not copied over month for month for month. It should be something that I have to wait for. I want to, it's going to be another 3 months till I get to see it again. I missed it, 3 months ago, and now it's made its turn. It's coming back to the area thrown fast. And depending on where you are from, if you're a local and you're from, Cyrenai's Edge or End or whatever it's called, from the Darkmere, hey, guess what? It's going to be cheaper entrance fee because the fair is designated for the Darkmere. If it's in Thronefast, the humans are going to get it cheaper. Or the passing guests are going to have to pay an extra fee. Because, hey, security?
Well, it's like, if you bundle all of your minigames in your game into one event, we'll call it just a yearly fair. It goes on for a week, we'll say. Now, I'm cool with that. That's fine. But I want to look forward to it. Like, when I played WoW and the Darkmoon Fair came around the very first time, I was looking forward to it. I went through, I did it, I had fun. The next year, I was excited. Turns out it was the exact same thing. from that point on, I was no longer excited to know that the Dark Moon Fair was ever coming.
Yeah.
Because it gives
The
you...
only reason why you kept on doing the Dark Moon Fairs was to find that one card or a pet that you were missing from your thing, which you could only get through buying tickets.
I mean, I could even see actual mechanics be used for this sort of thing. Even if it's got nothing relentlessly to do with the game itself. But, you know, they could add perception quests for that fair. And maybe if you cycle through, let's say, for instance, they have the fair 4 times in a year. Okay? You have 4 perception quests for that fair. Now, we don't know that they're linked together. That's something that the developers could possibly do. They could add quests to it as well, just for fun. You know, they could put fluff in there. You know, don't just offer... First off, what I hated to bits was the currency that was only available for the fair. That just bugged the hell out of me. And then, you know, the craftable items that were only available for a certain event. That really just kind of grinded my bones. It was just like, you know, why? You know, another currency. EverQuest 2, I think we had at least 25, 30 different currencies.
Yeah, it was
on top of our normal plat that we had. And it was just mind-boggling because you couldn't swap them out. You couldn't, you know, go to the bank and say, hey, I want to go and change this Ethnia currency to diamond currency that I got from this dungeon and whatnot, or from this event here. You know, they didn't have exchange rates, so you couldn't change them out and get the latest currency that was going on.
Yeah.
Because after so many expansions and after so many currency interactions that they brought into the game, all that other stuff is just obsolete. You couldn't do anything with it. A currency has to have value. Period. It has to have value. That's the whole point of a currency. It has to have value. It has to be splittable. It has to be tradable. That's what a currency is. Don't add fluff to it. If you're gonna, the fair has to be well thought through, and have like raffles.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a way for the devs to do dev events. You have a fair, you have the fair come out. They could do an in-game event with that. The GMs could be around there to prank us, to do this, to do that. They could have a huge fairground where they set up a huge epic raid mob that we have to all gank. And if we beat him down, hey, guess what? We get free toffees. But they could have raffles and stuff like that.
I'm gonna take that conversation, just kind of sidetrack a little bit. I'm going to take GM events as their own minigame.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are. They're separate from the game. I mean, most games try to start off and do GM events based on lore, but they always fail. So why not use your GM events as just minigames in themselves and let the GMs actually go and have themselves a good time? I mean, as everyone knows, I play on, Project 1999 servers. And one of the reasons why I keep going back is simply because people that run these servers, they do events all the time. They're creative. They're lots of fun. Some of them are just freaking hard. So the difficulty's there. Some of them are easy, but they're just whacked out. Like, for example, I was playing on one, I think, 6 months ago. They went into a zone that was primarily water, and they spawned a gigantic shark somewhere in there. They said, go find him. Now, little old me, I didn't work on my swimming, so I'm like, everyone else is moving past me. But one person found the shark, accidentally aggroed it, ran like crazy for help, and it turned into this gigantic cluster mess, we'll say, because no one really knew what was going on, but it was still fun. Later, after we figured out what was actually going on and where this thing was, we actually formed up, got organized, and took it on.
Mm.
That was like 4.5 hours of just fun.
Mm.
Well,
I mean, no one cared about loot or anything. It was fun.
That's something that can be touched to mini games. It's something that the GMs could do. I mean, just imagine the following. Still sidetracking a bit. Kilsin and his betitled name, Dream Crusher. Just think of the mini games he could do with that and crush our dreams in game. He could tell riddles and tell us, hey, guess what, guys? There's this amazing piece of loot out there. Go find it. Ha ha. We find this chest finally, open it up. All it's got is a piece of paper in there saying, hey, Dream Crusher, thanks you again. Ha ha. For Kilson, that would be, I think, that'd be a dream. He'd be able to mess with us.
A couple of those.
I can see it now. It tells you it's in this zone in the mountains. Someone finally finds they open up they loot a note that all it says is, I owe you one piece of loot, Kilson. I mean, I'm sorry, if that was me, I'd laugh my butt off. I'd be a little bitter, but it might be more.
Well,
I'd be more laughing at it than anything.
But getting serious again, real quick. Josh mentioned something earlier on about the guilds. They would do like mini obstacle courses. Now, would you like to see guilds actually create some kind of mini game for their, for their players, for their members, for the community, or for their, guild wannabes and whatnot? Would you actually like to see maybe something like that where you could actually say, hey, you want to join our guild? You've gone through this, you've gone through that, you've done the same old, but in game, guess what? You've got to go and do, you got an initiation. Do you dare? Would you actually support something like that? Do you think there would be an interest for something like that?
It would be pretty cool. But I think that there would have to be a heck of a lot of thought put into the development of something like that, because you're going to want to have traps, you're going to want to have special areas that you can build within your guild house or guild hall, for instance, which can only be guild specific. So it's going to take a lot of work, but I think it would be pretty cool if they put some thought into it.
Yeah, I'm same, but almost opposite in some ways here. I'm a fan and I promote that kind of thing, but using existing elements of the game. Because I've run scavenger hunts, I've run the drunken races, I've done hide and seek in EverQuest 1 near the end of my career, and that required no special tools or anything like that. And I always promote people to do it because if you're participating, you're having a great time, especially if it's done well.
Yeah.
It requires no extra work on the developer side. So there's no waiting for this new thing to be fixed or waiting for this to be put in. And it does go a long way to bringing a community together. Because now although you're not associating with like a GM or game elements created by the dev team, you're creating with actual community members who are just making a game up for other people's benefit.
Yeah.
You can have like inside zones or inside dungeons as well. They could even add mini games. Josh, you might remember this, and obviously you guys as well from EverQuest. But I remember it from EverQuest too. Unrest and its Labyrinth.
Yes.
It wasn't something major, but it
massive.
It wasn't huge or anything like that. But you could add something like that, have like mini games inside the game itself already that are part of the environment itself. Like have labyrinths in there that lead us, that are going to be a hell level to get through, kind of thing. It's going to be you get into this zone, and it could be completely randomized. It could even be GM controlled or something like that. We want to go to a certain dungeon, and we it's like I think. I posted something on the forum similar to this with the environment. Having like a central environment that was basically uncontrolled by the environment itself. It would be randomized. And that would be like a kind of central environment. So it's a central hub to get to all 4 points of Terminus. And depending on what kind of environment was in there, you would get randomly ported to different zones throughout the entire world. So if it was a frosted area, you might end up at the far top right corner of the world. It's completely something where you did not want to go. So it would have like 4 different kind of exits: north, south, east, west for each.
It almost sounds like zone roulette.
Yeah, something like that, basically.
Yeah, it's like you roll a dice. What zone do you
and inside,
roll a dice. Where are they going to show up in the zone?
And inside that individual zone, you could basically bring it back to normality by defeating the that mana source thing, that environment thing that we've seen in.
That purple pillar.
Yeah, that purple pillar thing. They would have those in the world. You would have to go in there with your group or with groups even and try and take that thing down. And each zone would have different kinds of mobs in it, so you would never know what kind of mobs you're going to encounter because of all the different environments. So something like that I could even see as a mini game, and something that is going to make us rip our hair out, because we know normally if we go through this zone here right now, we get to there. Yeah. And if we run straight on, we get to there. But now, instead of it being jungle and trees and looking similar to, let's say, the environment from Wild's End on screen right now, it's now a scorched up place with burnt trees and lava flowing all the way down. You run through straight ahead and boom, you're like, you're back. You've backtracked like 10 different zones. You're now back at the very beginning. You'd be biting your teeth out. I know it's nasty, but it's fun. It's something you're going to remember. You're going to be like, son of a... No.
Nasty and very difficult challenges can be fun and less irritating should you get like a free pass on like death penalties and such. Mm-hmm. Because let's face it, if you are in a place where it's like, 9 times out of 10 you're gonna die, it starts to feel like the devs just are hammering on your character. It's like, you just cannot win. Yeah. In the grand scheme of things, I mean, there is just so much that you can do. Minigames, especially if you consider GM events minigames. But I gotta tell you, I worry about how much of time it would cost the dev team to do something on a grander scale versus just doing something like a simple dice game in the tavern.
Yeah.
Actually, to be honest, I actually think creating these smaller games would be more of a task than actually going into their own environment, taking out the different environmental aspects that they already have and having a zone rotate. I think the time spent is actually almost just as much or even more for these mini games than actually going and messing with their own environment and just adding a timer in there or a if this happens, that happens kind of trigger, than rather going in and creating a simple dice game or board games and stuff. I think the time spent is going to be almost equal or even more for the mini games. So it is kind of tough. Especially if you want to do it right, because that's the thing. If they do mini games and do fairs and stuff like that, they have to give it a lot of thought for it to be something that we can engage in, especially in taverns and stuff, that doesn't feel or take us away from the game itself, where it's something that you can do. It's not too hard. It does, and plus with rewards as well, they have to really think about how are they going to approach that. They've got to be very careful with adding in rewards and fluff items and stuff like that to go around it as well. Because I don't want to see having random currencies that I can only spend on there for stuff that isn't really needed. I want to get that special effect.
But I certainly do want items that after a year, people say, "Hey, where did you get that cool cloak?" Oh, I got this from the first fair. You know, it was something I could get from that type of thing. So people go, "Oh, okay, that's different." You know, you don't just find it randomly in dungeons. It can be found only in certain things.
Yeah, that was the great thing about EverQuest 2. Is if you did all the quest series or all the events that they had it for their certain individual event, be it, you know, gathering the shinies or doing the quests, you would get unique items that were only from those events, like you know, the Frostfell mounts, you know, the ice tiger or the gingerbread tiger.
Yes.
You know, those were only things that you could have from those events, but obviously they went even one further and then they put it onto a cash shop and you could go and buy it at the end anyway. You know, that's something that they definitely should not do. If it's an item that, you know, absolutely looks cool and Josh has got that cloak or that mount or whatever it is and I want it, I'm going to have to wait next time till the fair comes. And if I can't be there, I have to wait for the third time till I get it. And if I don't get it, and I shouldn't be upset, he was lucky to get that. You know, that should not be something that's put onto a cash shop, even if it is a fluff item that can be purchased as well. That's the other thin red line that I draw as well. If you've gone and put the time into that event and I didn't, then you should be rewarded. You should have that one unique item that identifies you being at the Terminus fanfare, whatever they're going to call it, if they do have something like that. You know, they can have leaderboards as well inside the taverns, individually inside the taverns. Let's say, for instance, they have a chess game, they have something like Gwent. They can have leaderboards inside the regions in the taverns, and they could also have, maybe just for fun, a global tournament once a year. Boom. The top 5 from each tavern get together and they play at this one global event against each other, just for fun.
Well, I mean, let's just use Gwent as an example, because that's probably one of the most notorious minigames turned into a game that's going around right now. What if The Witcher was like an MMO? You know, you go into a tavern, you play some Gwent. All of a sudden, one day you log in, there's a Gwent tournament. Well, now all of a sudden you're playing, your score is being kept, and you're being compared to people in other taverns. You win your local tavern, and it's like, okay, so now what? Now the board gets wiped, and only these certain people get to play for round 2 because they're the winners. And then it goes in a ladder, almost like a tournament. I mean, is this something that people would look forward to? I know some people who would be super excited about something like that. People like me, I'd be like, I'll play, but if I lose, whatever.
You know, it's one of those things as well that also helps socialize the community unwillingly. Think about having an in-game tournament. In-game, what a great way to promote your game. What a great way to promote your game and to have streamers promote your game for you by being at that event and streaming it out. You know, that's a great way to just show how, you know, the communities are coming together. They've got this global event going on, yada yada yada, and so forth. You know, it's fun ways to help promote your game. But another thing I just thought of out of the box again, because that's what we do. We have these blitz moments and they just come in. Now we all know that we've had in multiple games as well. Not the collection quest. I'm not talking about shinies, but you've had these creature identifier spells where you have to identify a certain creature and whatnot.
Oh, the catalog stuff.
The catalog stuff. What about adding that to minigames as well? That, for instance, it's its own minigame that gives you an in-game title where for each zone you have to identify all the mobs in there. And you actually get a title at the end going through each zone. You identify all the insidious creatures towards that zone, and it's actually a mini game inside the game itself for you to add onto your character traits. It's actually part of your character trait, but it's a mini game. Now you have to actually go out and catalog the creatures.
Yeah, I
Or
like that.
you might have to catalog the individual resources, because obviously the resources are going to be tiered, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, but they might be called differently depending on what kind of area they're from. So you might have to go and catalog all the resources. That is part of your adventuring, crafting, your personal trait that makes you, in the end, fulfilled. It's part of your thingy. So you could have a fulfilled character or an unfulfilled character. It's something for you to do.
And the reason I like that is because it's simple. Doesn't require a lot of explanation or a lot of guides or just, a lot of reading to get into it. But also it promotes exploration. We know Pantheon is going to have set areas in the zone where there could be higher level. A zone could be for levels 1 through 40. We don't know. But they know they're going to add multiple tiers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you make the spell or the ability for cataloging these things a respectably short range, I can see the stress level building up when you're going to catalog something that's much higher than you, because you don't want to aggro it.
Yep.
But also, another added difficulty is if the game does migrate certain wildlife from zone to zone, you might only come across a specific creature in that zone 3 months out of the year. So you have to be lucky to get to catalog that creature in that zone at that specific time.
Take one of the most infamous zones in EverQuest 1, Kithakor Forest. All the monsters in that zone are one way during the day, another way during the night. So now all of a sudden, you go through all these zones, and you realize, wait a minute, I came to this zone yesterday, and there's different things out here at night. Well, son of a... Turn around and start going back.
Because, they added that in EverQuest 2. They had the cataloging, they had the investigation ability in EverQuest 2, but they were pointless. You had random quests for certain fun events where you had to go and catalog. They were added into the dungeons as one of the dungeon quests, the daily quests or whatever, where you would have to go and catalog 20 different creatures and then you've achieved the quest. But, I see so much more potential with the cataloging aspect and the investigation aspect as an ability when you're out in the game. Because that's part of your adventuring. To go and catalog.
Yeah, exactly.
It's part of being an explorer.
Yep.
Not so much an adventurer.
Yeah.
Because, that gives you the feel of you're discovering new things. You're not necessarily there to kill it. But you're there to just discover it, to learn about it, and maybe that could be something that happens when you catalog it.
Sidetrack real quick. Sorry, we're gonna go inside. I'm gonna completely drift off here now, and bring this into the crafting aspect, because as we know, they're gonna have scribe as a crafting ability. Now, what if, for creating maps and everything, through cataloging a zone and investigating a zone and having certain monumental points of interest within a zone that you investigate, basically. You get to a crossroads, you've got a sign, you can investigate it. You've investigated it, boom, it tells you that this seems to be a main crossroad within this zone. And you've gone and catalogued everything. What if that is something that adds to the ability for a scribe, if you could create maps, to create a more in-depth map? More detailed map, because he's actually gone and catalogued a certain zone and investigated a certain zone to its fullest. Sidetracking here, sorry about that. But what about something like that?
Yeah.
See, I'm still a little upset that there's not going to be maps. I don't want super in-depth, detailed maps. I'd like very, very basic ones that all look almost handwritten, because then it's like, I'm at a fork in a river. I don't know where I'm supposed to go, and then I'll get frustrated if I'm having a bad day. Whereas if I've got even a simple map, at least I've got some general direction. And I know, okay, I should go east to get to my friends, you know? If they made it so you had to work for your map, even a simple one, I would wholeheartedly back that.
I mean, you could even add in as a ability for scribes for a reason why we want to have scribes in your guilds or in the game, and want to have to go and purchase these scribe maps. For the fact of, if he's gone and fully catalogued and investigated everything, and per GPS, it will seek you could basically take his map and say, right, we're now here, we want to go all the way up there. It would automatically, as a reward maybe, pick the fastest or easiest route for you. It will automatically highlight the route for you. Go that way instead of going, following the path normally. You can also go this way. Maybe something like that. It all depends really on how and if VR are going to implement maps at all, because we all know that there's going to be websites out there dedicated to map making. There's most probably going to be people trying to create tools to help make maps and this, that and the other. So the question is as well, would it be worth the effort for them to also try and think of ways to reward the scribe for maybe map making and stuff? So that's another thing to point out as well, is it might sound cool, but is it worth the effort at the end of the day?
Yeah,
Right.
That's it.
Because, I mean, even if they don't have maps in the game, the first website that comes along that offers maps, I'm going to print out every map, I'm going to put them in a binder, and they're going to be right by my PC, so that when I play, I know where I'm going, when I would need to go somewhere. The way I am. And show me an old school EverQuest player that didn't have a binder full of quests and maps and all that other good stuff.
Hell, I even had, in the starting days of EverQuest 2, a binder full of stuff. We had a binder as well, so it's something that everybody's done, and it's even going to happen for Pantheon as well. I know exactly that I'm going to have a shit ton of binders here, catalogued, maps, going fast.
The only reason I push for maps in games because I'm trying to save the trees. Oh god, even I can't say that with a straight face.
Yep. So anyway, Shy, any questions in chat today?
Well,
Or thoughts?
not really. The only main question that was not answered that you guys didn't grab was from Robus, King of Games, asking, is this on iTunes?
Oh, he's talking about the podcast show.
At this point in time, the podcast will be uploaded to our website. That's where you can basically grab them. And Lex has also added the option in to download the podcast, so I don't see us in the future adding our podcast to iTunes unless Lexa tells us, basically, because of bandwidth issues and costs and everything, we will have to see a third party. Only if that ever happens is when we will seek out alternatives, but at the moment it's all on the website. Do you want to add to that, Lex?
Bandwidth will never be an issue, but the only reason I would ever see us going to iTunes or another third-party podcast group is if we simply had somebody else to administer and deal with it. Because your hands are full with the show, my hands are full with the website. We just don't have the time to add one more thing to the gigantic list of stuff to do.
Yep. There you have it. And we're still basically working out, we haven't discussed it yet, when we're going to upload or download and upload the podcast to the website, how frequently we're going to do it. We do not know yet. We haven't talked about this at all. We're just happy that we got the shows up to date to last week's show on the site already, that we got that milestone put through, and we're still going to debate and sit down and talk about how frequently we want to go and do this. If it's going to be once a month, that we grab 4 shows a month and put them on there, or if we try and keep it within the parameter of being a couple of days after we do the show. We do not know yet when and how we're going to do this. So
all I can say is getting that this last milestone was an ordeal. All I'm going to say. I was cursing at my computer more than ever before.
Yep. So, that brings us to the end of the show. Mechanics, minigames. Your final thoughts on the matters, guys. Minigames and whatnot. We'll start with you, Josh. Your final thoughts for the minigames.
Yeah. I think it's great, but it'll be great for something to be done down the line after 2 to 3 years, once the game is stabilized and everybody's happy and it's built up some speed by the dev team. It's certainly something that they should not even consider within the first 2 years, I reckon. But yeah, I think it'll definitely add more life to the world.
Right.
Short and sweet.
Lex?
I would certainly endorse minigames. I'd like to see just a mixture of simple games. Maybe a yearly joust. Maybe some dice in the tavern. Maybe little gems-like games so I can get my gems fix. Or something similar. I don't want the community to put a lot of pressure on VR for minigames. Because they really are just fluff. And if we were to force them to start focusing on mini games just through a massive outcry, we're going to inadvertently push development of the actual game, which is why we're all here, back even further. So I'm also with Josh saying, mini games are great, we love them, but please put that on the back burner. Don't worry about it. Whenever.
Yep, definitely. I see it the same way as these two guys. It's something that they could add on once they've got their game set up, out, and it's running its course, and it's everything's stable and how they want it to be. If they want to put something like mini games in there, I will support it and back it. It's something that they could take their time with, definitely, and should take their time with, because if they do it, it has to be done right. And it isn't even something that they could add in as a little hot fix, a little patch, a little update. It doesn't have to always be related to some major update. This is just something that they could put in when we're at a point where it's like, when's something new gonna happen? I see this mini games as something new happening. It adds a little twist. It adds a new flavor to the game itself, and whatnot. So this is something that could take, this is something like Josh said, 3 years minimum. It doesn't have to be in the next year, 2 years, 3 years time when the game's out. They could take their time with this. It's just something that they could add in if they want to, and if they do, just make sure that you talk to the community about it as well. See what the community has to say, what they would like to see happen. It's definitely something that should involve the community when it comes to something like this, because there's plenty of other games that have done mini games, and I'm sorry, they just suck. There's no other way to put it. They suck. They have absolutely.
Don't you talk bad about my gems.
They have no socializing aspects. They have no real connection to the game itself. There's no real thought behind it. And some of these games actually take away from the game itself. Look at Legends of Nomath. It sounded great, card game, similar to Gwent, but it took you actually to a different software. It took you outside of EverQuest 2. It killed the community. It was a great thought. I thought it was, a game that I would be able to play while I'm in the game, sitting around wasting my time, but it took me to a third-party software, to their third-party software, a separate program that had rewards for me to use in EverQuest 2. It kind of, was not part of the idea. If you're going to put something into the game, it shouldn't take me away from the game. That's what I'm trying to say. So that's my final words. And next week is our first player Q&A that we have. We have back-to-back player Q&As coming up. Next Thursday and the Thursday after that. So make sure to join us for those as we introduce some people to the community again. And then, yeah. Then we have... do I have the list in here? Do I have the calendar in here? I don't have the calendar. Doesn't matter. Anyway, next week will be our first player Q&A for the month of July. It's July already, guys. Unbelievable. It's July. How time flies. If you just think back... We had the Christmas streams from VR, the Christmas stream from VR. Then we had the over Easter stream, and now it's already July. It's insane. Time flies. I'm too old for this shit. Time is flying past. It's unbelievable. So with that, we hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you all next Thursday. Have a great evening. Good night.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.